Hello, everyone. Today I would like to speak to you about a little tool that I've created as a byproduct of working here. It's a very simple HTTP server, and for those of you, and it's a replacement for the Python server. Like as Wojtek said, Python is considered to be battery included, and one of the things it includes is a very simple one-liner that can be used to start an HTTP server. And I wrote a little replacement for that. But first, I would like to tell you a few words about me. I'm a software engineer here for more than five years. And most of my time here, I spent working on multimedia, especially streaming, and yeah, watching Big Bang Bunny. That's a video available with Creative Commons, and it's often used as a placeholder video in many services. So yeah, I got quite familiar with that guy over my years here. And a large part of that time here, like I've spent developing membrane framework together with Mateusz, and somewhere along the lines, like I became something called lead architect. I don't know what that means, but that's what stands next to my name. And now getting to the actual tool, I would like to start by presenting you how is it useful, when was it needed, and how I got the idea to create it. So in one of the projects I've been working on, we had basically Phoenix application that was linked with Membrane that was receiving requests and was doing the processing of recordings from web conferences. So there was a lot of files coming from the different speakers inside the conference. It was all sent to that service with requests containing JSON, and among other data, there were a list of URLs on how to get those files. So the service basically was making a request for that files, download it, and then processed them. And one thing, the problems that we encountered are that we had bug reports that were tied to specific input files. So we were getting that reports, we were getting the files, but we had no access to the actual server that they were placed on. So there was a problem of how to reproduce that issue. Of course, we could change the implementation and allow the service to read from a file instead of URL. But as most of the programmers were lazy, and we didn't want to do that, so the most simple solution for that is to get all those files. We were getting them zipped, so unzip them, replace that JSON that was also provided, replace the URLs there with localhost, and run the simple HTTP server so that our service then can make requests there and download them. Yeah, that was the first time like I've noticed like we're having only Elixir application, and out of nowhere the wild Python appears. That was the first time I thought I could do something about it. Here's another use case for such server that I call ad hoc HTTP server. And it's when working with the HLS, which stands for HTTP live streaming. That's a protocol done by Apple. Basically, not getting into the details, it's just a playlist, text file that contains, among tags, either a link to another playlist, or, as you can see down here, the actual files. So the player that receives the playlist reads it and makes a bunch of requests for all the playlists and the files it needs to play the stream. And once again, this is where the such server is useful. This is an excerpt from one of the demos that we have in Membrane. That was actually presented on the last meetup here. So it was getting the feed from your camera and producing the HLS. But then in order to play it, one will have to serve it somehow. Since the demo was like very basic, there was no HTTP server there. So the most straightforward solution is to just run a server in the folder where all the output is generated, and then pass a proper link to a player. And once again, we have an Elixir project, and all of a sudden we have dependency on the Python. We require someone to run Python. And yeah, we are all Elixir alchemists, programmers of Elixir. So and most of us don't have to know the Python and know such tool exists. And we have existing HTTP server, so why don't we use it? And I just wonder how hard could it be to replace the Python here with some Elixir equivalent. And as it turns out, it's pretty simple. This is the EXS script I created, like proof of concept that it can be done. And as you can see, it's only 25 lines long. I'll walk you through it quickly. The first thing to make it happen was the mix install. It's quite recent addition to the Elixir. Like it was added in 1.12. Currently, we're running 1.13 with 1.14 releasing soon. So it's quite recent, and I guess that's one of the let's say byproducts of developing Livebook, and which is quite nice. Like without this mix install, all of this probably wouldn't happen. As I said, I'm lazy, and I wouldn't want to start a whole new mix project in order to just check if it's possible to do this. So mix install is just getting the dependency. And yeah, as a side note, this mix install is also super useful with Benchy. This is also the find I've found on my computer. That probably I've created it doing some review when I was checking if one solution to generate bit string out of a list of atoms is better than the other. So yeah, with not many lines of code, I could just quickly check if my suggestion was correct, and it turns out it wasn't. So getting back to the script, after getting the plug with Cowboy, so the actual HTTP server, I needed to create a simple module that is plugs pipeline. All it does is, I've attached a logger, and the core of that pipeline is plug static, which serves the files. This whole thing is almost copied straightly from the docs for the plug static. The only thing I had to change was the from option passed to the plug static. So I put simply file cwd, which stands for current working directory. And it meant that this plug will be serving files that are placed in the current working directory. And if it's not able to serve that, the execution continues to another plug. This definition says that this plug is actually a function, which is defined below, and simply this function returns 404 in case we were not able to find the file and serve it. Having that module, the only thing left is to start the Cowboy server. Like, I guess that's not the usual way people start it. Like, most of the times it's somewhere in the boilerplate generated by Phoenix. If someone was starting, then probably he was doing that via some supervisors, so using the spec with plug Cowboy. But it turns out, after a bit of search, it turns out that the plug Cowboy provides a way to start like the server in place. And then just something I needed to add to make the script not shut down the execution after that, so that this kind of a hack to make it persistent. And like as the presentation says, I could reduce the number of lines of code needed to create that by replacing that with process sleep. Great, and it worked. This was actually something that I used in the first example I've provided. So the script was sitting there. And yeah, we're done. Thanks for your attention. We could go for the pizza, but yeah, I'm not only that I'm lazy, but I have a bit of a perfectionist in me, and this is not quite the replacement for the Python tool. There are still some features missing that I often relied on. The most basic ones are the way to configure it, change the port number in case the one that I put there was already taken, and it's not nice to have to edit the file to switch this port. The same goes for the directory. Like it should be possible to serve the files from different directory than the current. And one more feature that I sometimes used was directory listing. So the script I shown, in case the path requested was a directory, would simply return 404 because there's no such file. But the Python tool in such scenario generates an HTML with a list of all the files in such directory. It's a like interactive list, like you can click on the link, and it can be used to easily transfer files between computers in local networks. Like I used to send big files just from one computer to another in my at home. And one more thing, for that to be actually a valid tool, as a way to share it with other people. And yeah, is the EXS script good for that? Like at first, I thought that it might be problematic to get the arguments passed to the script, but it turns out that just calling system argv allows you to get whatever is passed to the Elixir script. So yeah, that's something I expected to be troublesome, but turns out to be solvable. But there are other problems. The first one is like with the reusing that for other people. the users would have to download that file and putting it in one place would mean that anywhere they go, they would have to call Elixir and then the whole path to the file, unless they somehow work around it. It would be nice to provide something like that out of the box. That's the bare minimum you expect from a proper tool. Then, it's a minor caveat, but after you get that script, you just the first time you start it, it starts to download the dependencies, and then only then the compilation happens. So that's something also not expected from a tool. And the limitation of EXS script is that, well, it's one file. So in case of growing of this tool, it would be quite a mess and not really maintainable. So it's kind of meh for that thing. But it turns out there is something in Erlang ecosystem, and Elixir has some sugar to use it. It's called eScript. This is excerpt from the docs for the task in Mixtool that describe it. So it generates a command line tool, like an executable. So yeah, that's what we want here. The downside is that it still requires Erlang to be available on the machine. But since this tool is addressed for the Elixir community, I guess I could live with that. And yeah, it takes all the dependencies, compiles them, and all the modules that are part of the project, and creates a whole package. So I can use more modules, place them in more than one file. So great, we can try to use that. And here are the steps that are required to create a script from the script you've seen before. Unfortunately, this was the moment I had to start a new Mix project. But having done the POC, I was already coped with doing that. And there I could move the module I defined inside the script. Then, the eScript API requires to have a module that will be implementing the main function that will receive the argv, the arguments passed from the user. So its responsibility would be basically the same as the EXS script, all the logic happens there. An entry inside Mix AXS that will tell Mix where to find that module. Okay, and this of course led to a bit of a problems. The first one was obviously finding a name. With EXS script, I could name it anything. Starting a Mix new, I had to type some name. And since we're dealing with Cowboy, that is actually doing serving the files, the thing that came into my mind was manger. Basically, the box you can see here that the cows eat from. So the cowboys serve the meals for the cows inside of manger. So once I typed it, I never thought about it again. And probably if you have any suggestions for a name, I can hear them after the presentation. Then next thing that I had to do was to parse the arguments. I was actually surprised to find that there is an option parser in Elixir that was ready to use. But it's definitely not often used. It's I haven't seen many CLI tools written in Elixir. So it seems it lacks some features that I think maybe at some point I may suggest as a maybe I will make a PR to the Elixir itself. But something that is common in other languages and it's missing in the Samshed parser are default values for the options. Like there is no way to say that by default I want to use port 8000 or something. I just need to add it to the parsed result of the parsing. Another thing that usually in other languages the parser accepts like a big set of options. So the short name, the long name of the option, the type, the default value if it's available, and the description. And out of that, the parsers usually generate the help for that, which is like automatically added. So if you type the name of the tool and then -- help, you will get the list of the available arguments, and that is totally missing in this tool. I also don't quite like the API here. I think you separately provide a list of the options. You would have to check the docs what the strict here means, and the aliases, like the short form for the arguments, are provided separately. So you have to like twice provide the name of the argument. But with all that being said, it worked well and allowed me to create a simple API, like arguments, passing the port and the directory via either this short option or this longer form, in no matter the order or how they are. The short forms can be used together with longer forms. Okay. So now that I have all the arguments, I had to pass them somehow to the server. Like starting the new Mix project, I created the Cowboy, started the Cowboy just as I usually would in Phoenix. So I created an OTP application, and the problem is that the application starts right with the whole eScript. So at the moment the code from the main module was executed, the application was already there. So I had no way to pass the arguments. And to work around it, I needed to disable the application. I started manually from within the CLI script, this main function. And the application only gets the static args that are defined in mix.axs. So anything dynamic was not available. So yeah, this was the way to disable the application start. You just have to set the app to nil, and that's in general that's the definition of eScript. Here's the main module that I'm using. Yeah, and I decided to go with the way to configure an application is to put it in application env. I realized creating this slide that it could be achieved by moving the start of the server into supervisor, like not the application, but supervisor would allow me to to pass the arguments there and change the spec of the run process. However, it would not solve another problem, would be that is passing the configuration to the plug static. Well, plug, this whole plug pipeline is defined well at compile time. So whatever was in the from was executed while at compilation time. So for script, that was okay because the script was compiled each time it was run. For such application, it is not. Thankfully, the guys creating this plug static thought about it, and there is a way to like dynamically get a value for this from attribute, and by passing module function attributes tuple, this plug each time it looks for a directory, calls that function, which is defined in this module below, and this function is responsible for getting the directory configured from the arguments parts from the CLI. Okay, and one last addition to the script was the directory listing. That's probably the biggest module in the whole app, besides mix.access. This simple code like is mainly a string with very basic HTML. It kind of reminded me of my childhood and creating my first website. And yeah, this is how it looks. Pretty basic stuff, but actually the Python does not look any better. So yeah, that's okay for me. And if you want to try it out, it's already there on the GitHub. With that first, let's say that this QR code will take you to the repo with the README, and this command will download, build, and create a script. There is a bit of a downside of using eScripts, that you still have to have the proper path added to the path environment variable. But like I already have done that. Like at first, I haven't noticed that it might be a problem. And after that, just calling the manger is available just like any other binary, and you can pass an options to it, and running it, and then visiting the local host in your browser will show the contents of the current directory. What's next? What can be done? What can be improved? My first thing when I saw especially the point number 2 was, that's not perfect either. So the way to go would be to create an actual binary out of this project. And for that, I think using Elixir Burrito seems like a good option. Basically, it uses Zig and Ziegler to create a wrapper around the whole application, and generates binary that embeds the whole OTP and everything needed for the app. The API can be improved, of course. The help I mentioned would be super helpful. Yeah, with the description, like it's not provided by the option parser, but it can be done manually. One option that is available in Python and it isn't right now in Manger is the bind argument, which you can use to set a different IP for the server to bind to. And of course, the improvements can be done around this directory listing. The one thing I'm missing from the Python is the link to the parent directory. That's quite can be easily done. but it can be extended and further with metadata. So we can create listings like, for example, I think Apache does. So we can have a last modified date and the size of the file and so on and so on. With the styling maybe, and with the architecture, we can add a template engine, and I would no longer have to write a string with containing HTML. And probably there can be many more things done, so I'm open for ideas. Are there any questions?